evening, everybody. My name is Haynes, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about shifting student mindsets, particularly how we can shift student mindsets to thinking about learning as a routine or just another daily obligation that they have to get out of the way to get to the next big thing in their day, and start to think about how we can actively learn in the classroom. So for a long time, educators have been faced with the same old questions. How are you going to use active learning to engage and involve your students in the classroom? How will you incorporate technology and differentiation into your lessons to make them more adaptable to the learner? And how is that going to look like in your classroom? All of these questions are very good ones. They are straight to the point. They're goal-oriented. They are collaborative and invite discussion. And they establish the problem that we all aim to address. How do we get students engaged and involved in learning things that they don't necessarily want to learn? But I will say this one thing. What they don't do is explain what active learning is, what that might look like, or explain the actual benefits of putting in the time and effort to incorporate active learning strategies into the classroom. It leaves us with this great idea, but the proof is in the pudding. And to take the time to trial and error engagement strategies with no substantial evidence that this will definitely, no doubt about it, 100% work the very first time you try it, can be a hard thing to convince educators of, especially with the steadily increasing workloads. On top of that, I'll tell you, it is increasingly difficult to convince people what you're telling them are the truth, and especially students, if you do not believe it yourself. So I would go on to venture that the very first step in shifting student mindsets is to first shift your own. To do that, I want you to think back, reflect on a time, a lesson, maybe a project, just a second in time that you learned something that has stuck with you since that moment. What about it made it so valuable? What about it made it so memorable? For me, a couple learning moments come to mind, but recently I had an experience in one of my college courses that I know will stick with me for a very, very long time. Here's what happened. It was almost the end of the week. My class that night was from 4 to 6:30. I work with preschoolers and kindergartners all day, so I was admittedly very tired. This is right after work. And what I had assumed would be a regular class night where I would go to the class, listen to the lecture, and apply what I learned through some healthy class discussion, quickly turned into something very, very different. For the first hour, the class went exactly how I expected it to. Listened to the lecture, we did a little bit of reflection, we listened to some more lecture, and then we had a class discussion. And then my professor dropped a bombshell on us. For the next 30 minutes, we were going to spend class working in pairs to create slideshow presentations on one of the topics we had discussed in class. We had to become the experts in 30 minutes. And then, when we were done, it's easy, just present it to the class. At first, I was extremely nervous. I had just got off work, okay? I was tired. And in the moment, it just felt like another extra assignment that I had to do to get over it so that I could get to the next thing in my life. But my group partner and I, we got it done. We went on Canva. We found a template that we liked. We spent the entirety of our allotted time researching and trying to condense as much information as possible into this slideshow. And eventually, maybe inevitably, it was our turn to present. And as we were going through our brushed, condensed presentation slides, we found more than a few mistakes. Our slideshow was full of spelling errors. The graphics that were a part of the template had somehow covered up half our words. So we're in the middle of presenting, and we're actively in the document typing, trying to fix the mistakes before anyone sees them. Don't know if that worked. Probably not. And we're moving the graphics to actually read what's on the slide. And I just remember feeling so in that moment. It was almost comical. Here was our rushed presentation, full of spelling errors, full of covered up words, and I'll be honest, more than likely some poorly summarized informational slides. But we were having fun. So what we got out of that was that things didn't need to be perfect. And in the moment, they weren't meant to be perfect. Our learning wasn't forced in the sense that we were only asked to create the slideshow and then present it. We weren't being graded on anything beyond our participation in that task. And there was no rubric, so we could focus on the bigger picture because we didn't have to worry about all those little things. I am not gonna lie, it was very stressful at first. Trying to condense a project of that scale into such a short amount of time, seriously, 30 minutes can feel like 5 in that situation. But the memories of our chaotic presentations are ones that I know I will carry with me for a very, very long time. I probably actually could recite that entire presentation front to back, but not because I fully and wholeheartedly understand every single thing that we put into it, but because of the experience that I had collaborating on it, creating it, and presenting it on a whim. So when we talk about having these authentic active learning experiences and even pushing away from normalized learning routines to engage in some spur-of-the-moment learning, it's important to remember how impactful these experiences are on our students. And I am not gonna lie again, implementing active learning is a completely different ballpark than traditional lecturing is. It moves teaching from a focus on educator-led delivery of content to a focus on student activity, student discussion, and application of knowledge in real time. It forces students to step up and take the wheel and take some agency, take some initiative in their learning. But probably the biggest barrier to this whole process is student resistance. You see, there are reasons that we have traditional methods of teaching, and some of them work very well, and others just don't happen to fit the needs of the students that we serve anymore. And regardless of their overall efficiency, these processes have become so normalized that students have learned the routines and expectations that are already laid out for them and are getting stuck in the perpetual cycle of doing school. Here's what we know from a Harvard study conducted a few years ago on active learning. Active learning and actually getting students to participate in their learning in the classroom has led to higher educational outcomes on almost all levels. The problem is, students don't know that. The researchers interviewed the students on their opinions on the ways that they learned best, and more often than not, the students stated that they preferred traditional lecturing and actually felt that they learned more from traditional lectures than from active learning. That Harvard study took the students' perceptions of the ways they thought that they learned the best and put them to the test. 2 classes alternated learning a concept in an active learning style and learning in the traditional lecturing style. And they tested at the end to see in which session they had learned more to determine which mode of method was more valuable. Well, which session was more valuable? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, the students thought that they had performed way better after listening to the traditional lectures. But in all actuality, they performed better on the test following the active learning sessions. The truth is that deep, authentic learning is hard work. It requires more effort from the students, which can easily be misinterpreted as a difficulty to learn the content. It's harder, it's more challenging. It all relates back to those traditional ideas of something being easy, equivalent to, hey, I'm pretty good at this, and something being more difficult to, I just can't get the hang of it. So I would say, as people, we tend to prefer the things that come easier to us and stray away from the things that don't. It is a mindset that is as easy to fall into as it is challenging to get out of. Shifting mindsets, although frustrating and time consuming, is in no way impossible. It's actually my favorite thing to say in these kinds of things. It's never too late to make a change. And it's not. Just the same as educators need time to integrate active learning into the classroom and learn how to do so effectively, students need time to adapt to that change and have them experience with active learning so that they can see the positive impacts it has in their performance. Integrating active learning is not something that you have to rush into or do all at once, or even do it right the first time. You can start slow and try again if you have to. In fact, try a million times as long as you find something that works. You could try using those quick, low-stake activities to get students involved without outside worries about grades or having a perfect final product. You could let students explore their problem solving, their analytical thinking, their creativity by allowing them to research topics that interest them and get them working in small groups to practice having collaborative conversation and dialogue without prompting. I'll be honest, it's all a lot easier being said than done. We're all human. We all enjoy our routines, our familiarity. It's what keeps things running and everything in order. But they can become quickly monotonous. And if you're not too careful, it can be easy to fall into that mindset of doing the same thing every day because it is easy and because it is familiar. We learn how to do school, how to do work, and how to do life without really taking the time to live in the moment, be spontaneous, and be authentic. The students of today are the future of tomorrow. They will be our leaders, our doctors, our teachers. It is essential that students leave schooling knowing that they have meaningful contributions to make and are equipped with the skills and knowledge they need to be successful, regardless of what they choose to pursue. Getting our students to think actively is the first step towards that tomorrow. So I urge you, go out there, live in the moment, be authentic, and engage in some active learning experiences while inspiring our students to do the same. Tomorrow starts today. Thank you.